are you looking at me like that?
Before I begin my review, I want to take you back a couple of months ago when I saw a screening of F9. I saw the trailer, and I remember I was among the audience, us laughing. There was other people in the theater laughing, but I found that trailer funny, and I just told myself, is M Night Shyamalan going to stay consistent on his ways of making Unbreakable and making this trilogy, or are you going to go back to making the terrible movies like he did in the past, The Airbender and The Happening? He's been consistent like this for most of his career. He just doesn't care. And most of his films have like this eerie twist revolved around it. And sometimes it can throw you off. Sometimes it could take you in the right direction. Sometimes you agree with it. But sometimes it turns out to become terrible storytelling. You get this consistent love-hate relationship with M. Night Shyamalan when it comes to his movies. When we follow a family on vacation, and when they stumble upon the beach, and at the specific beach, not only are they trapped, but also they are aging rapidly. So our characters must find a way to escape, or the more time they spend on this resort beach, they get older. I just gotta tell you that the premise is good enough. Like, think about it. Just think about it. You and your few friends go towards an island or go on the beach. You and your friends are trapped on the beach, and then you guys start to age rapidly. You're looking like a 24-year-old model, and then once you leave the beach resort, you're a 98-year-old Betty White. That is one of the positives I had to point out. Like, he takes this different horrific premise, and then he takes the characters along with it. He puts them in so much torment. Like, our characters are on the island. When they begin to notice that some characters are aging rapidly, we got intense things happening. Characters start to act differently, and also there are children involved. That actually added more intensity, because when you see that the children are aging on this island, it brings this intense, eerie, like, disturbing feeling. And you're just asking yourself, why would M. Night Shyamalan go this route? It's just an interesting feeling, because the characters themselves, well, the children, when they grow older, they still have a mindset of the children. So yeah, you're looking at a 24-year-old Victoria's Secret model, but she still have a mindset of an 8-year-old girl. I felt this, but I feel like when you're being brought in, you'll be a little bit hesitant to accept it, because I was a little hesitant accepting it. Looking at the way this film is constructed, this film has a slow build-up that leads them towards the island, and we start off on these kids, and I feel like the kids are maybe like the emotional bait that brings the audience in, and I feel like the film does a good job of doing so. See our characters go to this resort, and this resort beach that's surrounded by mountainous rocks, and our characters are trapped, and then we just have our intense story. And when we get a little bit more layers of things, that's where we get into the second act, and then we get a little bit more reveal on the plot of what the film is trying to go. And I feel like there is times in the movie where the film kind of sidetracks itself, where the audience will kind of lose its momentum or lose its balance, where they could feel a little bit lost in the film. You begin to find like hope within yourself that hopefully your questions will be answered, because this film deals with heavy topics like cancer, memory loss, pregnancy, all the stuff that you go through when you get older, starting off as a child, or if you're from 24-year-old, 28-year-old me, all the way to an 80-year-old man. The film does a good job of using that and turning it into having that into a horror element. But one thing I want to talk about, that the performances of everyone did a good job, and their performances elevated some of the plot points. And also the best performance in this movie was the guy from Hereditary. I had to point out this man, Alex Wolff. This man knows how to act. He killed it in his role. Yeah, we get this slow, chaotic build-up that's leading up towards it. Our characters are aging rapidly, and they're losing their sanity. Characters are going crazy. Characters are getting pregnant. I mean, this movie is going haywire. But we got the good plot, and we got some decent performances, but then we got into the dialogue, and where the film went straight into happening territory.
What? No. What? No. What? No. What? No. Ma'am, we're not. What? No. What? No.
So yeah, this movie has some good elements towards it, but also this film has a lot of frustrating elements with this movie. Like, after leaving this movie, I couldn't really figure out whether I wanted to like it or whether I wanted to say it was a bad movie or not, because I had a hard time, because I'm just so conflicted. But the dialogue, man, the dialogue just happened. and it felt like it was a happening, because we got characters that seem like they're over the top. Feels like most of their actions, emotions, and mannerisms seem to be out of context. Characters say something that seems out of ordinary, like that has nothing to do with the situation. Like, for example, there's a character in this movie that strictly talks about movies, and in every other scene he's in, he just says, "Hey, someone mentioned the movie," and it just remind me of the hot dog guy from The Happening. And then I'm asking myself, am I watching The Happening? It almost felt like The Happening, because we got a few characters that are acting out of context that doesn't seem to make sense. And I just feel like, is the film self-aware? Is the film doing this on purpose? What are we doing here? Can we get back to the seriousness, please? I just found myself cringing and found myself laughing from some of the horrific events. Like, some of the horrific events that's happening, they had comedic purposes along with that. And I just started laughing because, I don't know, maybe I felt uncomfortable that it was funny, or it was actually funny. Yeah, and like I said before, it has an interesting premise, but the way it was trying to execute its storytelling, it was very sloppy, because I told you, if you watch this movie, you're going to ask yourself a few questions, right? So while you watch this movie, you're going to ask yourself a few questions, but the questions that you ask yourself would not get answered. So the film doesn't do a good job of answering your questions, and that deals with the finality, like the revolving around this twist. I can't really go into full details, but it revolves around this character who has a certain illness. She took this medicine, but yet they made this thing as something big, as something special, ties into the main characters that's on the beach. It doesn't really justify why these characters happen to stay on the beach. There's a lot of convolution revolving around that plot, because it doesn't do a good job of answering your questions. This film had some eerie images that I could say that had potential to become a rated R movie. And actually, when some of the scares were happening, no pun intended, there were some scary images that I felt like it could have been an R movie. But the way this movie was directed, I did not like M Night Shyamalan's direction style in this movie. Like, there are some shots in this movie that had like a graining look, and then it had like a clear look, and he was going back and forth, but maybe he's like his artistic vision or something, because Spike Lee had a similar directing style in his Five Bloods. But for M Night Shyamalan's movie, it was just jarring, because it happened in one particular scene. What happened a couple of particular scenes, and we have like a horror elements, and we have some horror images. The film kind of has like a slow zoom in on the horror image, and then it does a quick shot away from the horror image. So I'm just thinking where a character will there's be a horrific moment where you see a character going through something horrific, where if you actually see how horrific it is, it'll be a rated R movie. But what the film does, the film will backtrack and do a quick shot away, so you just hear the noise. Going on to the second act, you can find yourself lost in the film. So the film try to find ways to catch the audience up by having expository dialogue and having exposition. This film relies heavy on exposition just for you to follow, but the film doesn't really do a good job at that, because it doesn't answer some of your questions. So leading on to that third act, there's a lot of exposition, and there's a lot of characters just spoon-feeding in you information. I don't like it when the film does that. But if M Night Shyamalan, you can't have it your way. But yeah, I found myself a little bit conflicted on the convolution, because the film had an interesting premise. It had an interesting plot. It had some potential, but just the potential wasn't there because of the execution. You find yourself a fun, decent, frustrating experience watching this movie. I guarantee you that. So I'm going to give Old from M Night Shyamalan a Michael Keaton Batman. I am just right in the middle. Put it right in the bubble, or you can maybe consider it a guilty pleasure. So yeah, more like a Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, guilty pleasure, average, fun. One of those things. But I had a decent, frustrating time watching this movie that I was still thoroughly entertained. That's my review of Old. Have you seen Old? What are your thoughts? Comment below. Let's talk about it, and I'll see you guys in my next review. And if you like everything you see and you agree, subscribe to my channel and join me in the Batman family. I'll have more Batman-tastic reviews on the way. You have been warned. Till then, check.